Hey guys, and welcome to day 4 of my Halloween series that I started on this channel. I hope that you guys are enjoying the series so far, and with that all being said, let's get right into today's video. Glennie Lanford was 50 years old and lived on a farmland just outside of Hopkinsville, Kentucky in the small hamlet of Kelly. Living on this property with her was her adult son JC, his wife Aileen, and their 3 children. On the farm they had a few pigs, a few farm dogs, and a few barn cats, but besides that they didn't have very many animals on the property. There was also no telephone and no TV anywhere on this land, and their water supply came purely from the water well at the back of the property. On August 1st, 1955, Glennie, her son JC, and his wife Aileen were entertaining some company. This company consisted of Glennie's oldest son, Elmer Sutton, and his wife Farah, a friend of the family's named Billy Ray Taylor and his wife June, as well as Aileen's older brother O.P. Baker. Glennie had a very strict no alcohol rule on her property, meaning that there was no drinking allowed anywhere on her land, not in her house, not in her son's house, and nowhere on the farmland. And so the people that were at her home that night were not partaking in drinking alcohol, and they were not under any other kind of influence when all of these strange kind of events started to happen. Around 7 p.m., Billy Ray went outside to gather water from the water well. That's when he said he seen what he described as a silver glowing saucer gliding through the sky about 12 meters above the ground. He said that this strange craft was leaving a multicolored trail behind it while it glided through the sky. He said that the craft looked like it stopped above the neighbor's yard and then dropped and landed about 90 meters from the farmhouse. He said that after this he couldn't see the craft anymore as it had landed behind a group of trees, so he ran back to the farmhouse to tell his friends what he had seen, and at first nobody believed him. They thought that maybe he saw a meteor and was just exaggerating, or thought that he saw something else. But shortly after this, one of the farm dogs started barking viciously and growling at something, which really startled all of the 11 adults. Billy and Elmer went to investigate what the dog was barking at, and the men said that they saw a glowing light off in the field. And once they noticed this glowing light, it started to kind of move towards them. And as it got closer, they were able to make out what this glowing light was coming from. At first they thought that it might be a car or something like that out in the field, but as it got closer, they noticed that it was coming from a very small creature. They said that this creature was very small, being at only about 1 meter tall, and that it had a very large round head. They said that this creature had very long arms that almost hung down to the ground and huge hands with very long fingernails and floppy ears. They also said that this creature again was emitting a yellow light and that it had no knees, but its upper body was very muscular and its legs were very skinny. And they described this creature as being silver in color. The creature was walking towards the farmhouse with its arms facing up towards the sky. Elmer, obviously, after seeing this creature, became quite frightened and shot at it. And this scared the creature and it ran off towards the back of the home on all fours and disappeared into the bushes. When they returned back to the house to tell the others what they had seen, they looked up and noticed that another one of these creatures were looking at them through the window. JC shot at this one and it too fled to the back of the home and into the bushes just like the first one. Allegedly, at this point, Billy Ray tried to go outside to see if the other 2 creatures that they had shot at had been killed. And when he walked outside of the house, one of these creatures reached at his head from the roof of the home. This kept happening for quite a few hours, with the home seemingly being under attack by these strange small creatures. At one point, one of these creatures again was on the roof, and when they shot at it, it actually floated across the backyard where it landed on the fence and sat there briefly before taking off. This went on for about 3 hours, with these strange little creatures lurking all over the property and kind of watching the 11 adults through the windows on the home. The creature seemed to not like the light very much and stayed only in the dark. They walked on 2 legs, but when they seemed frightened by something such as somebody yelling or them being shot at, they would run off on all fours. And at this time when they were frightened, they also seemed to send off a brighter glow. At around 11 o'clock, all of the adults made a break for their vans and jumped in and drove down to the Hopkinsville's police department. The police there confirmed that all of the 11 people that came in on that evening seemed genuinely frightened. The officers who were on at the time notified their chief of police, who notified the Kentucky State Police as well as 2 state troopers. All of which, along with the witnesses, besides June, who seemed to be exceptionally frightened, headed back to the farmhouse to do some investigating. One of the police officers said that on the way to the home he actually heard a whining sound and saw a bright light leading right towards the farmhouse, but he later recapped this statement and said that he believed it was a meteor. Other locals from Hopkinsville claimed to have seen meteors all over in various places that night. The scene at this time was now flooded with light while all of the investigators searched the land to see if they could capture a glimpse of these little strange creatures. There was no sign of these strange beings at the time, but there was signs of a fire, and they actually found a patch of grass that seemed to be luminescent, and when they tested it, it came back saying that this was some kind of fungus. By 2:30 a.m., every single person had left the property except for the 11 adults who were staying there. Glennie went to bed, and at this point she noticed that there was one of these creatures watching her through the bedroom window. She went and told this to her oldest son, Elmer. Elmer went and grabbed his shotgun and went outside to shoot at this creature, but this didn't help anything, and only more of these creatures seemed to emerge. These creatures watched the 11 adults through the window all night, but they never attempted to enter the home, and they weren't being violent at all, and they were completely gone by the time sunrise had come. The next morning, law enforcement arrived again to do another sweep of the property, and by now, this encounter was public knowledge. All of the witnesses did an interview for the local radio station. And for the next few weeks, news reporters would come from all over Kentucky trying to get some kind of interview with any of the witnesses. An officer from Fort Campbell, Kentucky Air Force Base came to do an investigation of the scene after hearing about the situation that had occurred on the radio. Public Information Office actually denies that there was ever a serious investigation of this property. The family as well as the neighbors denied almost all interviews, and the search of this property didn't seem too thorough as not even the gun casings from that evening were collected. Project Blue Book, a UFO investigation group, claimed that there was no sightings or evidence that this had happened, and no Air Force bases had sighted any UFOs in the sky that evening, suggesting that this didn't even happen. The incident is now listed in the Blue Books as unidentified. News coverage on this case brought a lot of attention to the farm and brought a lot of people to come and see the property. Glennie Lanford really wasn't into this attention. She never did any other interviews except for her initial one where she was on the local radio station talking about what had happened at her home. She also denied any offers of people wanting to sell merch on her land. She even put a plea in the newspaper asking people to please not come and visit her land. And when these people did arrive and tourists came because they wanted to see if they could spot one of these creatures, she would actually call the police and have them escorted off her property. Many of the papers and news reporters who covered this case really exaggerated it. They even called it an invasion, even though these creatures weren't violent at all. And they started referring to them as the little green men, but again, these creatures were not green, they were silver. In June of 1956, Isabella Davis decided that she wanted to investigate this and see if she could get any more information that would verify that this happened. At this time, she spent 4 days in Hopkinsville and then followed up in 2 months, and she spoke with both Glennie and Aileen, who had the exact same story. She also spoke to all of the neighbors who were in the area at that time and said that they might have seen something, and also all 3 of the police departments that were involved in the case. She also obtained all of the Air Force documents on this case, and that is when she discovered Home of the Blue Books actually requested information on this case in 1957. An investigator from this Air Force base did visit the scene, but allegedly the higher-ups didn't believe in UFO landings, so they just kind of shoved it aside. But a scientific consultant for the Blue Books did actually take a personal interest in this case after reading Isabella's manuscript. And Isabella Davis did publish a report on this case called Close Encounters at Kelly, and this was published by UFO Encounters in 1958. Now, there isn't really an explanation for this case, but like in any case similar to this one, people try to debunk it any way that they can. Some people believe that these creatures were actually just big horned owls trying to defend their territory, but to me that doesn't make absolutely any sense. None of the 11 adults except Billy Ray tried to make any money off of this encounter. Billy Ray actually tried to start charging people to come and visit his property, so I guess he must have been a neighbor of Glennie's. But besides him, none of the other witnesses wanted anything to do with the public. They didn't want to be famous, they didn't want money, they didn't want anything to do with it. So for them to have made this up just doesn't make sense to me because they really didn't get anything out of it. But guys, that brings us to the end of this video. It wouldn't really be my channel if I didn't put some kind of cryptid story in here, so this is my cryptid for the Halloween series. But if you like this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below what you'd like to see in my future videos, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any more videos from me. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Spooky 7 video. Bye guys!